Hi, I'm Harish Goteti and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about designing solutions on-premise versus AWS. The whole concept of this, the whole idea behind this video is to show you the main guiding principles that has changed from architecting on-premise versus cloud because I mean, so that you can change your mindset. It is a mindset shift that has to happen so that we can build good architectures on AWS or any cloud for that matter, but AWS in specific. So that's what this video is about, and let's dive in. So let's get started on-premise and AWS. So before we jump in, I want to talk about if you're an architect in the early 2000 before AWS came in, you would definitely understand what I'm talking because we had the physical servers, then we moved on to the VMware vSphere servers where we did provisioning, and vSphere did provide some level of automation, and then the cloud came in, which is AWS at that time. So the the challenge was, and AWS has evolved significantly over the last 15 years or 10 to 15 years, right? There are so many new features, there are so many new services that are available for architects, right? The whole concept is really around the principles that we can. So a lot of services in AWS are really based on some principles, right? So that's what I'm sharing today. So these are the principles that will help us to think differently when we design architectures on the cloud. So let's go ahead and get started. On-premise architecture design, you have to guess the capacity needs, right? But as we think about designing capacity on, I mean, planning capacity on the cloud, you don't need to guess. Either you can monitor or to understand the capacity from the previous auto scaling event, or you can just go ahead and leverage the scaling features to scale your workloads as required. So that is a big difference. So you don't need to worry about capacity planning. You need to, but not as much as you need to focus on it, but you don't need to worry about it as we did earlier on the on-premise environment. Second thing is production scale testing is very complex and need to be planned very early. So when we define an architecture for an on-premise environment, we know, hey, we have 16 servers, this, that, and all of that stuff. Scale testing was next to impossible because before going live, like we used to put everything on production and test it and then resolve issues. So that used to delay a lot of things. So production scale testing was very complex at that time. So here we can create production scale with when you're designing solutions on the cloud. You can design, you can create a production scale test environment for a few days, complete your testing and decommission them. So it's really easy. So you don't really need to focus on, hey, how the production scale the testing will happen. You need to spend a lot of energy on it. So that is another big advantage or shift that we need to think about. Third one is limited automation on physical servers. As you know, on the physical servers limit your ability to automate. But now, since you are designing on the cloud for the cloud on AWS, you have to think, hey, how can I transform this into code? Because your architecture is code on AWS, so you can treat your entire architecture as code, and then go ahead and configure it and deploy it using code. The entire architecture can be deployed as code, right? So that is another thing to think about when you're designing architectures on the cloud on AWS. The next one is architecture decisions are one-time events with very few changes here. So during those times with on-premise, the architecture was like, will be a lot of people. There used to be a lot of people who collaborate, contribute, review, do all that stuff because it won't change much. That required a lot of attention, lot of review, lot of approvals. But that used to eat in a lot of time. So just this architecture design for on-premise servers used to take a lot of time, right? So now we can focus on, you have to think through, okay, so next 3 years, what would be the compliance requirements, governance requirements? So your architecture will evolve as per over time, as per the either the compliance governance requirements or innovation that happens within the team. So you don't really need to get stuck with one kind of thing. And given when you design on AWS, you have to design it to the best possible way that you can do it for today and maybe a couple of years down the line. But we can't forecast what's going to happen, what kind of hacking thing that come up that will have impact on the architecture. So we don't know what happens in the next 2 years. I mean, it's very hard to know what happens in the next 6 months. So your architecture should be evolutionary. It should have those ability to evolve over time, either for innovations within the team or for outside, outside factors. So that's another important thing. And with the last one that I want to share is really about there for on-premise environments, there was no data. So every business has their own data, like their own servers and stuff. There is nothing to share. There's nothing to learn, right? So there's very limited data for to depend on for architecture design. Whereas you should now focus on, hey, we can if you are designing a workload, for example, say big data or big data project or data workload, you have to think through as an architect. It's not you may think, hey, I'm an architect, I should design it myself. No, you don't need to. You have to think through, hey, who has done that? What does AWS say about designing a big data architecture? What are the best practices? Because AWS publishes thousands of best practices across their services because they have reviewed thousands of architectures, implemented and contributed to the success of thousands of customers. So they have all that data, they have all that reference that we can leverage. So it's really important for as an architect to think, hey, I'm going to design a big data work architecture for a big data workload. So who did this in the past? What does AWS say to do for this kind of thing? So there's so many things. I'll share the links in the comments, but there's so many things like you have AWS blueprints, you have AWS labs, and then you have quick starts. So there's so many resources that you can leverage where they share the best practices for kind of workload that you plan to design. So there is so much data available out there that you can leverage to when you design any type of workload. So that's really it. So as you see, it's a huge shift on how, especially for, I mean, it especially when you're designing workloads now, critical workloads. I assume you're not, uh, they are not going to. Let's say you're a business and you want to design an architecture for one of the production environments. I don't think they are going. Yeah, the business, you as a business owner would hire a 1 year or two experienced architect, right? So you want the most experienced, most experienced architect out there. And when you say most experienced, these guys have, for example, I have been in this industry as an architect for over 14 years now. Right. So when we were 14 years, that means we did things way before the cloud happened, right? So the thing is, we have to think through what mind shift should happen to be able to build good architectures on AWS, right? So, one thing to understand is when you're hiring architects or when you're designing workloads, you have to think through, hey, how can I design it for AWS? What does AWS for every step of architecture design? Ask the question, what does AWS say about this, right? In networking, what does AWS say about this? Storage, what does AWS say? So you should keep questioning yourself so that over a period of time, this mind shift will happen. It took a while for me, honestly, when I started with AWS, designing architectures on AWS. It took a while for me to really make that shift, because of as they say, old habits die hard. So it took a while, but I figured it out, and I've been doing it for over like it's like 7 years now, building architectures on AWS and also Azure. So this is the video. So I hope this gave you some value. If yes, go ahead and like this video and then subscribe to my channel. So because I'm going to share a lot of stuff around AWS architecture and designing solutions on AWS. Thanks for watching and talk to you.